friends, hello people of God. Thank you for stopping by, making time in joining our teachings every day. We do appreciate such a commitment. We do appreciate all that you do in making these teachings the best. All that we say is to thank you. And then we hope that this message, it is our prayer that it will continue to enlarge your coast. It will continue to enlarge your spiritual capacity. It will enlarge you as a believer. It makes you transform from one stage to the another. That is our prayer for you today. And then we want to continue our teachings on spiritual gifts. So in our early teachings, what we taught was the gift of faith. We realized that the gift of faith is the gift of the Spirit that is given to a believer in order that he might receive miracles. So for you to be able to receive miracles, you need the gift of faith. Our next teaching is going to focus on working of miracles. Working of miracles is the second gift of the Spirit, or it is the second gift of the power gift. Yes. So the power gift, we said that the gift of faith, working of miracles, and then the gift of healings. So we're going to talk about working of miracles today. So we want to give you two foundations. The first one is that the best gift is the gift needed at the time. The best gift is the gift needed at the time. So the best gift, we are referring to all the gifts that we're talking about. You need a particular gift at a time. As humans, you may be encountered with a lot of issues, a lot of challenges, a lot of difficulties. There is a particular gift that you may need at a particular point in time. So, for instance, the word of wisdom, which is a divine revelation of the plan and purpose of God, is the greatest of all the gifts of the Spirit. However, if you are sick, you don't need the manifestation of this word of knowledge that we're talking about, or the word of wisdom that we talk about. But if you are sick, you need a manifestation of the gift of healing. So it comes back to what we are saying, that the best gift is the gift needed at the time. Yes. The second one is that you find your place of ministry. You have to find your place of ministry. When you look at Paul's letter to the Corinthians, that is 1 Corinthians chapter 12 verse 31, it reads that covet earnestly the best gifts. Covet earnestly. Covet means to desire earnestly. He said desire earnestly the best gifts. So you need to find your place in ministry. We also read 1 Corinthians chapter 14 verse 1. Paul was exhorting the Corinthians to desire spiritual gifts. So when you read, he said desire spiritual gifts. That is what Paul said to the church of Corinth, that they should desire spiritual gifts. For you to desire spiritual gifts, you need to find your place in ministry. So it comes back to our second point, that you find your place of ministry, as Paul is saying in 1 Corinthians chapter 14 verse 1. Good. Now we want to focus on the working of miracles. So let's move to the working of miracles. Now, working of miracles. We want to focus on what miracle is. So let's define miracle. A miracle can be defined as a supernatural intervention by God in the ordinary course of nature. So a supernatural intervention by God in the ordinary course. So in the ordinary realm, we may have a way in doing things, but a miracle is when God intervenes in something for it to be different. Very good. So a word miracle, generally speaking, means one thing, but when used specifically, it can also mean another thing. So for instance, in a figure of speech, we do say that miracle drugs. We also say that miracle detergents. All these things are things that we do say. For instance, miracle drugs, people do say it, and then it does things for them. Miracle detergents, it does things for us in our houses. We do say it, we keep using these things. But is it actually miracles? It is the general term or the broader spectrum of how humans see miracles to be. and also in the area of healings, you see people receive healings, and then it is called healing miracles. But what at all is working of miracles? So working of miracles, therefore, is a supernatural intervention in the course or the ordinary course of nature, a temporal suspension of the accustomed order. So temporarily, things can be paused, and then God intervenes. That is what we say a miracle is. Then, or an interruption in the system of nature, as we know it is operated by the power of the Holy Spirit. So what we are saying is that in the natural course of things, what we think that things do happen can be changed, and then when it is changed, it is called a miracle. So I'm going to give you biblical examples of the working of miracles, or the working of miracles in operation. So I'm going to give you Old Testament examples and also New Testament examples. So Old Testament examples, we may have 2 of them, and the New Testament too, also 2 of them. But the first one to start with is when Moses was with the Israelites. That is the Old Testament example, first one. So Exodus chapter 7 through chapter 14, you find all these miraculous deliverance of God's people, yes, there. And then a lot of miracles were performed, a number of them. But we want to go through 3 of them. So the first one is when Aaron threw down his rod and it was turned into serpent. When you read Exodus chapter 7 verse 9 to 12, yes, it is there. So let's just go through them, let's glance through them, and then we make something out of them. So verse 9, when Pharaoh says to you, perform a miracle, then say to Aaron, take your staff and throw it down before Pharaoh, and it will become a snake. Verse 10, so Moses and Aaron went to Pharaoh and did just as the Lord commanded. Aaron threw his staff down in front of Pharaoh and his officials, and it became a snake. Verse 11, Pharaoh then summoned wise men and sorcerers, and the Egyptian magicians also did the same thing by their secret arts. Verse 12, the last verse, each one threw down his staff and it became a snake, but Aaron's staff swallowed up the other staffs. So that is it for Aaron's miracle. Yes, it was backed up by the Holy Spirit. Yes, the second one is when dust was turned into insects. Exodus chapter 8 verse 16 to 18. So let's just go through verse 16. Then the Lord said to Moses, tell Aaron, stretch out your staff and strike the dust off the ground, and throughout the land of Egypt the dust will become gnats. Verse 17, they did this, and when Aaron stretched out his hand with the staff and struck the dust of the ground, gnats came on people and animals. All the dust throughout the land of Egypt became gnats. Verse 18, but when the magicians tried to produce gnats by their secret arts, they could not, since the gnats were on the people and animals everywhere. So that was also a second miracle that was performed by Aaron. The magicians tried to perform the same, but it couldn't because the dust has already been turned into. I don't know if they wanted to restore it, but according to the Bible, they could not perform that miracle. So the last one is when Moses stretched forth his rod and the sea divided. That is Exodus chapter 14 verse 15 to 31. It is such a long reading, so I'm just going to do verse 21 and 20. Yes, and also do verse 26, 27, 28. So 21, then Moses stretched out his hands over the sea, and all that night the Lord drove the sea back, and strong earth wind, and turned it into dry land. The waters were divided. Verse 22, and the Israelites went through the sea on dry ground, with a wall of water on their right and on their left. So that is it. Moses performed that miracle. He divided the sea for the people to pass through it. So Lord wanted to restore the sea by the same miracle that Moses did. So verse 26, then the Lord said to Moses, stretch out your hand over the sea so that the waters may flow back over the Egyptians and their chariots and horsemen. Verse 27, Moses stretched out his hands over the sea, and at daybreak the sea went back to its place. The Egyptians were flying towards it, and the Lord swept them into the sea. Verse 28, the last verse, the water flew back and covered the chariots and horsemen, the entire army of Pharaoh, and had followed the Israelites into the sea. Not one of them survived. So these are the miracles that were performed when Moses was with the Israelites. So now to our New Testament examples. The first one is Jesus feeding of 5,000. So when you read John chapter 6 verse 5 to 14, you realize that Jesus took a little boy's lunch and he was able to feed thousands of people. So let's just go through it. John 6 verse 5 to 14. Verse 5. When Jesus looked up and saw a great crowd coming towards him, he said to Philip, where shall we buy bread for these people to eat? Verse 6. He asked this only to test him, for he already had in mind what he was going to do. Verse 7. Philip answered him, it would take more than half a year's wages to buy enough bread to each one of them to have a bite. Verse 8. Another of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, spoke up. Verse 9. There is a boy with 5 small barley loaves and 2 small fish, but how far will they go among so many? Verse 10. Jesus said, have the people sit down. There was plenty of grass in that place, and they sat down. About 5,000 men were there. Verse 11. Jesus then took the loaves, gave thanks, and distributed to those who were seated as much as they wanted. He did the same with the fish. Verse 12. When they had all had enough to eat, he said to his disciples, gather the pieces that are left over. Let nothing be wasted. Verse 13. So they gathered them and filled 12 baskets with the pieces of 5 barley loaves left over by those who had eaten. Verse 14. After the people saw the sign Jesus performed, they began to say, surely this is the prophet who is to come into the world. So Jesus did such a great miracle by feeding 5,000 of people with 5 loaves and then 2 fish. Yes, this is a very popular story in the Bible. Yes, so that is the first miracle, the New Testament miracle. The second one is Ananias and Sapphira. When you read Acts chapter 5 verse 1 to 10, you realize that Peter was able to pass judgment. He was able to carry out divine judgment onto them. And then when you read the story, you realize that they sold their properties. They were supposed to return the amount that was there, but they brought half of the amount. And then divine judgment was casted onto Ananias and Sapphira. Ananias died quickly. Yeah, so let's just go through it. Acts chapter 5 verse 1 to 10. Verse 1. Now a man named Ananias, together with his wife Sapphira, so also sold a piece of property. Verse 2. With his wife full knowledge, he kept back part of the money for herself, but brought the rest and put it at the apostles' feet. Verse 3. Then Peter said, Ananias, how is it that Satan has so filled your heart that you have lied to the Holy Spirit and have kept for yourself some of the money you received for the land? Verse 4. Didn't it belong to you before it was sold? And after it was sold, wasn't the money at your disposal? What made you think of doing such a thing? You have not lied just to human beings, but to God. The last verse, when Ananias heard this, he fell down and died, and great fear seized all who heard what had happened. So when you continue reading, you realize that nobody told his wife Sapphira, but Sapphira too also came, and then she lied. She didn't know that the husband had already died, so she also came and then she lied, and then the spirit of death was able to cast on her too, and then she too, the judgment was casted on her. She also died. So that is also the second miracle in the New Testament. Ananias and Sapphira, Peter, led by the Spirit, was able to carry out divine judgment on them. So that is it for the working of miracles, the examples of the working of miracles. So as a closure message, I want to make it clear to you that the gift of faith actually receives miracles, but the gift of working of miracles perform the miracles. So in a typical church setting, we have a pastor performing miracles and then the believers receiving miracle. A believer needs the gift of faith to receive the miracle, but a pastor needs the gift of working of miracles to perform a miracle into people's life. Yes, so that is it for the close of the gift of working of miracles. Yes, so you do well to follow us on all our social media platforms. It's Obeng Peprah Kenneth, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, Obeng Peprah Kenneth. Yeah, and then you also comment on the videos. Comment if you have any insight. If you want to share something, you can also comment it there. If you want deeper insight, yes, you can also ask questions, and then we follow up, and then we give you answers through the comments. Yes, so thank you for following up. Our next gift is the gift of healings. I hope you will not miss it. Thank you very much.